Right about now, marinas, campgrounds, beach towns, heritage destinations, and more across this province are usually kicking it into high gear for their prime, sometimes only season. Of course, the pandemic had other plans for all of us. With us on the hit that tourism is now taking during this crisis, we welcome in Harcourt, Ontario, in Haliburton County, Beth Potter. She's president and CEO of the Tourism Industry Association of Ontario. And in North Bay, Ontario, Ray Sapiano, owner of the Martin River Lodge. And it's great to have you two on TVO tonight. I just want to share some facts and figures that you're well aware of with our viewers and listeners to set the table for the discussion to come. Tourism in this province is a $36 billion a year industry. My goodness, 400,000 jobs depend on it. It contributes more than 4% of the province's economy. That's more than agriculture, mining, and forestry combined. However, since COVID-19, Ontario tourism has lost out on more than $18 billion worth of revenue. That's more than half the revenue it usually gets. 129,000 jobs have disappeared. That's more than 30% of tourism's jobs. Beth, I wonder if I could get you to start. Give us a sense of the range of different tourism adventures that those numbers reflect.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having us here today. And I will just say that tourism is made up of so many different subsectors. When people think of tourism, they often think of, methods of travel, planes, trains, and automobiles, and where they stay, hotels, resorts, B&Bs. But it also includes things like attractions, so museums and special events, festivals, music concerts, camping, whitewater rafting, fly-in fishing camps. It's a wide-ranging industry, and you can find it in pretty much every riding in Ontario.
Now, it feels like at this stage of the game, much, if not all of the summer is going to be a write-off for some of the sectors that you just listed. And I don't want to be, overly inflammatory here, but I wonder if panic is setting in.
We certainly are feeling a lot of anxiety from owner-operators, especially those who rely on U.S. Visitors. A lot of the Northern Ontario camps and lodges, those that are resource-based tourism operators, can rely 98 to 100% on U.S. visitors. And with the borders closed, we know that that's bad news for them. But the rest of the province is also bracing for a very different kind of summer, a very hyper-local summer without not a lot of international visitors at all this year.
Ray, let's find out about your experience on the ground now. First of all, where is your lodge?
So we're a drive-to fishing and hunting resort located in Martin River, Ontario, which is about 30 minutes north of where I am now in North Bay and about 4 hours from Toronto. We're accessible. We offer a lot of the things that Beth has mentioned as a resource-based tourism operation.
How long you been in business?
The camp is 95 years old this year. Martin River Lodge as a business is 87 years old. My wife Donna and I have owned it since 2012.
And who had it? I mean, has it always been in the family, or who had it before you?
No, it's been a number of different owners. The company was founded in 1933 by American owners, and it's changed hands. I believe Donna and I are the 8th owners in those 8 years.
And Ray, under normal circumstances, has it provided you and your family with a decent living?
It sure has. I mean, we bought the camp. I worked in the corporate world for 30 plus years and made a deliberate lifestyle change, if you will. And it's been a great project for us and yes, certainly it's provided our livelihood.
And bookings are obviously off right now. How much are they off by?
Quite significantly. We are currently at about 23% of where we were last year, and half of that is U.S. bookings. So technically, we're sitting at about 12-13%, right now, which is not a very viable place to be.
Part of my job is to ask a lot of inappropriate questions. So if this is one of them, you just tell me to bug off. But you want to give us a sense of what your revenues are off by at this point?
Well, as I said, I'm not going to quote specific numbers, but like I said, we're easily down 75, 80% on bookings at this point. We've had no revenues. We would have normally opened May long weekend. We're closed in May, and we've just decided that we will not be opening in June, because we don't expect that the restrictions are going to be lifted by that time. It's a week-to-week thing. We've run various financial models, and it's an ongoing decision-making process as to whether or not it's going to make sense to open it all this year.
How many staff do you normally have, and how many have you got working for you right now?
We have 0 staff working for us right now. Normally, we would have 5. We had secured all of our employees for the season in February. And in April, we rescinded all those offers and advised people that we would not be opening in May. This month, we notified them that we will not be opening in June. And it's, as I say, it's a week-to-week thing. And it's very unfortunate as everybody's feeling the pain.
So one last thing before I get Beth back in here, and that is, you know, of course, about Prime Minister Trudeau's wage backstop program. I guess that was not generous enough in order for it to make sense for you to hire people back?
At this point right now, the government programs that were made available are somewhat inconsequential. If we're not going to open, if we're not hiring staff, then wage subsidies are meaningless. And if we have no revenues coming in, and we have no cash flow, that's the big problem, is cash flow is broken. Then we can't afford to turn the lights on, never mind pay anybody. So it's a dichotomy that way. The $40,000 interest-free loan is a help, but again, you're adding more debt, even though it may be interest-free for a couple of years. You're adding more debt to businesses that have broken cash flows and have a hard time keeping up with their normal obligations.
Now, Beth, that's one man's story, but of course, in your province-wide situation, you multiply that by thousands upon thousands and thousands of stories, and boy, is the sector in trouble. What do you need, and from whom right now, to save things?
So we have been in discussions with the federal government about the current programs that are on offer and how they're not necessarily meeting the needs of everyone. And we have seen some changes to those programs over the past few weeks. But going forward, there's going to need to be some kind of a stimulus package for the tourism industry in order to get it going again. It's not just liquidity. It's, as Ray was saying, it's cash flow. And when you've got seasonal businesses who are at the end of their cash flow from last year, and their cash flow for this year has been cut off and hasn't even started. You've got a lot of businesses who won't be able to pay their mortgage, won't be able to pay their staff, and it just looks like a really bleak season ahead. And we're really concerned about the number of businesses that could close permanently because of this.
And what would that stimulus program specifically look like?
There'll be a couple different phases to it. One is we need to get Ontarians out visiting the province again. And so we'll need to get our business owners thinking about a different demographic in the future. And we need Ontarians to think about a different kind of vacation this summer for certain. So different adventures and experiences that are available in Ontario and not going farther afield. But on the other side of it, there are still liquidity issues that businesses are going to require and some help with, and that's in the form of ongoing mortgage assistance, ongoing wage subsidies. And we're appreciative of what the government has done so far. And if you don't work with government, you may not appreciate how fast they are moving right now. But there are still an awful lot of businesses that have felt like they've been lost in the shuffle.
Ray, would any of that make a difference?
It will, but I would add to that that certainly some immediate pain that needs addressing. But the recovery coming up really is going to extend into 21 and likely into 22. There's one fix to this, and it's called money. They need money, and they need it now, and they need it going forward. I think that that also all of the various tourism marketing bodies, of which Beth's organization is one, but there's regional tourism bodies. They're going to need augmented funding to get more aggressively involved in marketing and communications going forward. I think that the government needs to look at maintaining wage subsidies in a meaningful way going into 21 and possibly beyond. Some of the other ideas that I've been thinking about is to reinstate the GST rebate for visitors to Canada when Americans can come back, for example, and other international travelers.
Well, let me jump in there for a second and put that issue to Beth,
Sure.
because at the moment, Beth, we've got a very thick border not just between Canada and the United States, but between Ontario and all the other provinces. We've got no traveling. So in some respects, and I don't want to exaggerate this, but do you have an opportunity here to sell Ontario to Ontarians as never before? Presumably, once we're all free from house arrest, we're going to want to get back out there and see the province. No?
Absolutely. The focus this year will and well into 2021 will be a hyper local market, and we will be encouraging Ontarians to get out and travel the province. But we also have to understand that not all tourism business can necessarily survive just on Ontarians getting out of their homes. It's a phased-in approach. Hotels are not filled up necessarily just from leisure travel. There's an awful lot of business travel that it will take a long time to rebuild. The meetings and conventions and trade shows that bring international visitors into our province is going to be slow to come back. And so we are going to have to rely more on those local businesses, those local festivals and events, once we can start having gatherings of larger than 5 people.
But to your point,
yeah, go ahead, please.
Absolutely, domestic travel will lead the recovery here. So it's critical.
How will you be able to run your business if and when you get back in shape, respecting protocols of 6 feet apart and all of that business? I mean, can you actually do that?
The short answer is yes. The longer answer is we have to understand it and study it, and it will be a challenge in some respects. Some of the things I think about, for example, is how long do you think people are going to wear a mask in 25, 30-degree weather? How long do you think social distancing and diligent hygiene practices is going to stick once you introduce alcohol into the equation, right? Maybe a funny thing, but I mean, when people go to a vacation, they're going to enjoy some beverages, right? And we may lose track of that kind of stuff. How do you police that and manage it? We have to look at some of the different service offerings we have. We specialize in a lot of remote backlake guided fishing trips, which require transporting guests in trucks, ATVs, amphibious vehicles, float planes,
too,
and what
right?
have you. Sure. And so, how do you protect people and keep people safe in close quarters? So, at the very least, in addition to wearing helmets, people, including staff, are going to have to don masks, right? So that's the very least. How do you maintain social distancing in a fishing boat, right?
Hmm.
And all of these things. All of the equipment that will need to be sanitized on a regular basis. Our staff, when we're working around camp, we've got a plethora of power and hand tools and all those kinds of things. Every time they change hands, they'll need to be cleaned. So the answer is certainly yes. The big question is how and what's it going to cost?
Mm. Well, let me put this to Beth, because I know that you've been working with other groups to try to create, I guess, what you call some global standards for when tourism is allowed to open back up again. Global standards for you means what?
So we have been working with the World Travel and Tourism Council and our colleagues around the world to look at what are those global standards so that we can create a seamless experience for the traveler when we're ready to open our doors again. And the example that we use is we want continuity. We don't want, like, if you think back to post 9/11, and every time you went into an airport, it was a different experience. And you never knew what to expect as a traveler. We don't want that this time. Uh, we want a commonality of practice across the different subsectors of our industry, whether it's going through an airport and flying on planes, arriving at a hotel or a resort or other kind of accommodator. If you go to an amusement attraction or a festival or event, we want to have similar protocols, and we want them to all line up with what's happening in other jurisdictions around the world. So we've been doing that work at the global level and then bringing that work back down to the provincial level to ensure that the more fine-tuned protocol that is significant to a specific business still catches that or lines up properly with the global protocol, and so that we're not reinventing the wheel, we're not creating how-to or checklists in silos. We're doing it with some continuity and some clarity around it.
Now, I do notice when I asked you about what the government, I didn't say which one, but what government could do to help, you went instantly to the federal government and talked about a list of things that the federal Liberal government could do to help out. We should give equal time to the province here. Do you have any
Yeah.
expectations out of Doug Ford's government at Queen's Park?
Yeah, so we've been working very closely over the last few weeks with the Ministry of Labor, Training and Skills Development on potential changes or amendments to the Employment Standards Act. Right now, if you're laid off, you're on a temporary layoff, and that temporary layoff may need to be extended. And so we're looking at that. We also want to make sure that if you're a seasonal worker and the business you work for doesn't get to open for the full season and you don't get all of your qualifying time, that there's some flexibility allowed there. We're also working with the Ministry of Finance through the Financial Services Authority on some gaps that we've found in the insurance industry. And then, of course, last week we were talking with Minister Elliott about creating an alignment between her ministry, the public health agencies across the province, and the municipalities on authority at the local level. Who's giving what instruction to business, and what is the expectation? Who holds the final gavel on whether a business can open or can't?
Now, Ray, you've heard Premier Doug Ford say, "We love our American neighbors. We just don't want you here right now." At what point would you like that message to be, "We love our American neighbors. Now get your heinies up here because we want your dollars as well"?
Well, look, all of us are concerned with safety first on both sides of the border, and I don't want to put any business owner. I wouldn't want to see myself, my family, our staff, our community. We're a small community of about 80 people in Martin River. We don't want to put anybody at risk. So the short answer to that one, Steve, is when it's safe. And look, we there's the social responsibility side to this equation too. We have to get this right. We've got one chance, right? Nobody wants a second wave. That's not going to be good for anybody. So we need to get this right, and we understand there's sacrifice, and this is where we need government help to see us through this period of sacrifice in order to ensure the safety of all of us.
I do wonder, though, Ray, whether you think we ought to have kind of two different ways to measure this. Maybe one set of standards and one level of concern for people who live in downtown Toronto, for example. But where you are, where there's, it's a very sparsely populated part of the province, should we open up faster and harder?
There are those who would say yes, and there's others on the other side of the table as well. Look, you're right. We've been very fortunate here. I always like to use this analogy. Where we are, we have 2.4 people per square kilometer. That compares to about 3,400 people per square kilometer in Toronto. Okay. So big difference. So I've jokingly said, hey, we're used to social distancing. We're used to self-isolation in that respect, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that we want to import risk, right? Because as I said, we're still where we are, we're a small community, and a lot of these businesses are near or close to a lot of these small communities. Yes, the tourism dollars are important, but if we don't fix this problem, then there's not going to be any economy in any sector, not just
Well, in which
tourism.
case, I do have to ask you then, how long do you think you can hold out under the current conditions before that's it? No more business for Ray.
It's going to be different for everybody. We have, I mean, we're having to dip into our personal savings to supplement. I mean, we have a working model that will see us through to next spring if we have to. It's not without pain, believe me. Other businesses, as Beth alluded to, may not have the wherewithal to do that. That's why we need government help, and we need it now, and we need it in a big way.
Beth, in our last minute here, let me just ask you, it's been said that yours is the first industry to really feel the pain of this pandemic, and yours will probably be the last to recover from it as well, just given the logistics that we've been talking about here. Do you buy into that?
I absolutely do. As we mentioned earlier in our conversation today, there's a very thick border. We're not going to see Americans and international visitors come back for a while. It's going to be slow to recover as far as our business and events industry. It's going to be a long time before hotels are back to capacity. If they're down in single-digit occupancy now, it's going to be a long time before we get them back up into double occupancy. And there are so many businesses that have had to make a change in order to try and survive. There's cost to reopening, and going back to that traveler, it's going to take a long time for us to rebuild the trust with travelers to make sure that they're comfortable traveling again. And to Ray's point earlier, the idea around community, we have to be communicating with the travelers. One of the things that we are talking about is potentially some kind of a traveler's pledge where, not only from a business perspective, are we putting in a lot of work to make sure that it'll be safe and healthy for our guests to come back, but we want the travelers to also commit to doing their part when they come back, and respecting the fact that changes have had to be made within businesses, and things may be a little slower than they were in the past, and that's okay.
Well, we wish you both good fortune with your efforts, and we thank you for sharing your stories on TVO tonight. Beth Potter and Ray Sapiano, Godspeed to both of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve, for having us.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.